I think we already have a competitive advantage to begin with because we have a little bit more value to offer with our blended model where we can blend direct rates with our blankets, but also we have some unique carriers to work with. Now, if it's just somebody who's using a third party all in, it's a really easy process. We talk about, hey, we'll show you what our blended model would look like. But the real deal is you have to sell the value of everything else we offer, the freight bill audit across the whole thing, the direct carrier support, the TMS with the analytics that are substantially more advanced than the typical TMS out there, to where the point where that rate study is just to solidify, like, all right, let's keep going forward. It's not the end all sale. Back when it was just brokerage, honestly, if they don't get that data back, they're probably not even looking at it. And there's a good chance they're not even looking at it at the end of the day anyway. When we were in that current boat, we do set up a more formal process to present the data. We put it in a visual view. Here's what your cost per shipment average is. If we can get that enough trust at the start of the call to get them to give us what they paid so that we can show a blended model and where we would beat their rates and where we wouldn't, we show that data. But at the end of the day, if you send them a CSV file or an Excel file, the same file that they sent you with rates, there's no chance you're going to get that unless it's true transactional. And that's just not the type of business we're going for anyway.
Part of the differentiation of Rocket and what we do differently is that you can tell there's a hallmark. If you talk to somebody and they seem super interested and you ask for data and they just send it right over, it seems like, oh, that is great. This deal's moving quickly. But that's actually one telltale sign of like they're bidding with everybody. This is a file that's already created. On the flip side of that, if they don't have a file that's just like a rate comparison file they send to all brokers or 3PLs, and they can't get you the data, it makes it difficult to even show them the value. Because at the end of the day, most brands, whether they are rate shopping or they want value in customer service and integrations, you can't even have that conversation if you're going to charge them 20% more than their current portfolio. So you have to be able to show rates within a week time frame. And you can't just say, hey, give me data and I'll get it back to you in September. They've already changed their mind probably, or it's already lost priority. One of the things we do differently is because we build a lot of our API connections direct when we do the blended model, and also because we have a good API partner for the third-party blanket rates. There's carriers out there, ABF, Avrid, and others that do dynamic rating, and we actually quote with an API batch rater instead of a Zarlite batch rater template when it's a really good opportunity. And we get rates that are more competitive than the static, and we also can blend it together. And when you say blended model and what we were doing, which was their freight carrier and our freight carrier. Now, if we're attacking or going after a customer in the home delivery space, it's our uncommon carriers and freight carriers all quoting. So if it's B2B, it's going to be a common freight carrier. If it's residential, it's going to be a home delivery carrier, presented in a way that they can see a blended model between the two different types. But I think uniquely, our head of revenue, Troy Barter, he's brought a different aspect to it, which is an actual ROI calculator. And you present that and that deal moves a lot quicker. So we've gotten a rate study and we're moving towards onboarding. Can you walk through that process of what you think is the ideal onboarding?
I think the ideal onboarding is depending on customer to customer, how quick they want to move. So we will move at the pace of the customer. If the customer wants custom integrations, how quick they want to move onto the TMS, that's how quick our team is going to move and pivot to accommodate what the client needs. Mm-hmm. I think the ideal onboarding for a client is to, after that credit app is submitted, we set up that call, not only demo the TMS, but show them the capabilities. And once we put our team in front of them and show them the capabilities, what our team's able to do, I think that really closes and seals the deal.
Yeah. And I think part of what we do differently and why it's impactful to our, I guess I would say, the velocity of how quickly somebody onboards and turns into new revenue for our company is that by the time they're onboarding, they don't just meet Claudia that day like, well, welcome to Rocket. I'm the director of customer success. You've never met me. Oftentimes you're on the phone calls with sales and you're listening in and you're meeting with the sales team and understanding what the account would need. And then you're there right away, but you also don't go away. And I think a lot of SaaS companies have an SDR to an account executive to a customer success team. The only way that company is profitable is if all the people that onboarded and were involved no longer have to be involved. We do it differently because we have to keep customers forever. That's our model. But I think it's pretty important that you're involved in the sales process as well as customer success. So touching on that, Michael, once a customer starts shipping with us, What's our motion? What's the ideal motion? What's Rocket's motion to make sure that we're actually giving them the experience that they were sold?
I think the easiest way to explain that is to explain what the industry standard looks like. And from what I've encountered and what I hear and what I've seen is you have your salesperson or your rep, they get you onboarded, pricing looks good, and they go away after a little while. If that company or the 3PL you're using has a good back office support operations team, that's the real sealer of the deal in that portion of the industry. And that might not even be enough to keep them to stay. The way we do it at Rocket is we have to hit them at from all angles to make sure that they see the value across the entire operation. So obviously, when a customer's onboarded, they're going to get to know our customer success team. They're going to get to know our operations team. Operation and customer success are very different. Operations is anything to do with a shipment, from reconsignments, returns, tracking updates, anything to do with a rescue shipments, all of that. Customer success is just making sure that we're going down the line that we sold them. Hey, we're going to find ways to make you more efficient, reduce your freight spend over time, and dive into those issues with you. And it's a super nice feature because we're in this all day long every day, and we see issues with certain clients that we can bring as a example case study to another client. So we have those two things. The thing that I would add that really sets us apart is we're constantly trying to innovate with tech. We're not a tech only company, but we've had plenty of prospects come over to us, not willingly at first, because they loved the service support they were getting from their previous provider, which is awesome. And that's what we try to do too. But if you're stuck in, we're doing a good job for you, but we're not innovating, we're not being aggressive with trying to get you CSPs, bring in new carriers, add new features. We have a new tracking link functionality that is way more consistent. And basically, it's consistent across any carrier to your customer. Things like that are what is going to keep that customer staying. You can't stay stagnant. And that's what we're doing different. And that's what we're seeing massive success with right now. And we're going to keep going.
Yeah, I think to juxtapose that and like the entire reason that we have customer success at Rocket, even though that's more of a SaaS and software industry title, is that if you just look at what incentives exist for our brands to work with us and why we have certain departments, we only monetize well if the customer onboards smoothly, we integrate deeply, and then they stay for a long period of time. We're not playing the short game like most big box brokerages, which is just a margin play. How much margin can I make on each shipment? And then the account executive stays attached until he thinks the revenue is going to stay. And the only way the company grows is he goes and gets another customer, because they churn at 30, 40, 50%. We churn under 5% of customers per year. We actually have negative churn if you look at shipment count, because our brands are growing quickly in e-commerce and retail. But the reason that exists is because our incentive is to keep them for the long term. And so we have a customer success motion, and our incentive aligns with us actually having to service them really well. Whereas most SaaS companies, the incentive is to never talk to the customer again. They want them to be fully autonomous. And most big box brokerages, they'll either do cradle to grave and you have one contact, and if he's out sick, your whole operation is a little bit different for a week. But it's like one of the big box brokers, they're not consolidated into 3 companies. It's one of their big competitors. They've been around a long time. They get a different account executive every 3 months because they'll move and get a promotion up the company. And then that brand and that company or customer ends up with a new contact. At Rocket, we have the same operations staff supported by the same customer success team. You might get introduced to new people, not because someone's left, but because we needed to support your account with more people. I always just trust companies that are built around incentives. You could say we have the best customer service, but if you don't have a customer success motion separate from operations, then no, you don't. If you're outsourcing your entire support team to the Philippines or to Colombia for customer facing, and that's your whole team, you're not investing in that. And the reason they're not is because they go for a margin game short term, and then they have churn. And the logistics industry, I think it's probably 40% churn is probably average. I'm just making that up, but it sounds right. And that's because it's always been brokerage to brokerage, 3PL. You lose customers directly to carriers, you get them back, you lose them to another 3PL. If you do it differently and it's a platform play with some management, but also some SaaS, allowing the brand to dictate which carriers are used and why, you can probably stay with them for 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years. Then you don't have to add 10 customers a week that give you 1 or 2 shipments that you make 20% rip on or a 40% rip on. You can just add customers sustainably. And if you're really going to do it, you add 10 customers a week anyways. which is going back to the point of what Claudia was talking about. Of, hey, we onboard at the pace of the customer. Some of them are large brands with 10 decision makers and champions. Some of them are small companies that ship a lot, but it's one person who makes the decision to use us and they want to onboard right now. You have to be able to be set up for both.
Just to tail off on that, if you are just a carrier or just a 3PL, there's a lot of value in that. And there's a massive portion of the industry that can get that value and extract that value. The problem is that it's going to come to an end. It always does. And it's a little bit, it takes the wind out of your sails when you take a customer. And I know we have a good case study for this. Take a customer from just beginning to they've just grown a massive brand and they've outgrown you. And you had an amazing relationship, but you just can't take them any further. And they know it and you know it. And so then they have to go and you have to restart that process. It's hard when you're just direct or you're just a third party where you can only really offer pricing because you have to own the whole pricing. Yes, you can go in there and walk docs and look at packaging and all this stuff. But until you can go to that next step where you're okay not owning all the pricing, you have a system that allows them to see their entire supply chain, even the shipments they're not moving with you and different modes. All of a sudden you become a massive value because you can start to advise on the entire supply chain because you see the whole thing and you're not a huge managed trans provider that you have to have 10 points on top of the entire transportation spend. The industry gets very greedy in that sense, and that's where you can lose customers and you have to start over. So that's tough. And that's where I'm glad we have a great offering that it mitigates that.
And I think that there's most of the industry, I'd say 90% is in the transactional big box brokerage, truckload LTL. How much can we make per shipment and keep the customer, and then build relationships so that people feel bad about leaving, even if they outgrow them. Or there's some boutique providers that are pretty large companies, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And all they do is custom CSP, TMS management, but they only want 3 or 4 customers a year. They just go after that and sustainable growth. They don't ever lose customers. What we're trying to do at Rocket is serve the mid-market. So bring on a lot of brands, build enough tech in-house and utilize partners for the rest that it makes sense for our customer to have everything in there, and then never have the incentive. And my entire goal is for our customers to never look at Rocket as the liability of you charge me too much money, and instead as a partner. It's probably overused, but a partner to reach over to and say, help me save money. What can I do next? And we have brands right now that I've been working with since 2014, almost 10 years. We have those brands that have used me as a third-party brokerage before I started Rocket, used me as a third-party brokerage in the early days of Rocket, now still use our third-party brokerage rates and their direct carriers. And then they'll just tell us, hey, we want to add this carrier. They reached out to us. Can you load them in? And we integrate and go. And any other normal third-party brokerage would have lost that customer or would have lost a huge chunk of it. And that's the churn I was talking about. You don't have to be seen as valuable. You just can't be the liability. You don't want to have the target on your back when the CFO or the private equity group looks at freight spend and says, Gabe at Rocket is the problem. And I used to be in that spot, and it's a lot more comfortable growing without that being the case. At the end of the day, though, if you don't add more customers than you lose, you can't survive in this space. You have to always add customers. Generally speaking, if you can solve the problem or give a solution to 5 customers every month are onboarding onto the platform and you don't lose any, and when you do churn, it's because they got acquired or they went insolvent. And that's the only time we've ever lost a major customer at Rocket, is they've either been bought or they went insolvent and it was out of our control. If we keep that track record, that's 4 years of that so far, you can continue probably growing 50% year over year without any bumps. The industry and the market is going to change. And uniquely, we started in 2020. We rode the wave. 2023 was a very difficult year. We still grew pretty significantly, but man, that was a challenge. 2024, we're pretty heavy in e-commerce. It's been down for shipment count for a lot of our big brands, but we've added so many new offerings and so many new customers. We're growing steadily. The next year is going to be pretty significant for Rocket.
I think we have a good motion. Like what you were saying is it's all about the customer success motion. You don't want to bring in customer success too early in on a deal, but you want to bring them in at the right time to introduce them to what the next phase from the account executive, where their next phase is going, and then introduce them to myself or the rest of the customer success team, who they'll then be working with the next 60 to 90 days in that onboarding period of the beginning stages. However, it doesn't end there, because then they get to know our team, they get to utilize our services and realize that we rock at customer service.
We rock.
And then not only that, but then we work with them for that length period of time where then it becomes, we're starting to work on those quarterly business reviews and we start working with our clients on new solutions.